All right. And we're live. Alex, great to have you on the pod. I know we've known each other now dating, back to 2017? Is that right?
2017, yeah. I was learning in your footsteps at Deloitte. I was just trying to pick up one thing after another. But yeah, since 2017, late 2017, I believe.
Alex, I don't know if you learned anything from me. Clearly, you're the one now crushing it as a founder and executive startup while I'm toiling away my 9 to 5. So I think I should have learned a little bit more from you is what I'm gathering from this experience. But 5 years in, so now we had a chance to reconnect recently, really to hear about all the exciting stuff you have underway at Seal the Seasons, where you're COO and co-founder, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For now 8 years in to the.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, it's kind of started in college, and then you spend a couple years, especially getting out of college, trying to figure out exactly what a business is because you don't really know how that works. So yeah. I think, but I like to say in 2016 we did our first amount of revenue. So I always kind of say that's 2016 we incorporated, and that's when we decided this is the business model we'll move forward with, and that's kind of how we got going.
I like it. And so tell us a bit more about just the genesis of Seal the Seasons, how you and your co-founders brought it all together.
Yeah, so my co-founder is Patrick Teeter. We've been friends since second grade. We both actually originally from the Philadelphia area. He moved in third grade down to North Carolina, and we reconnected actually in college, pretty randomly at a dining hall. And the rest is a bit of a history. We became roommates and housemates, and eventually now business partners on this. And the idea really came from working at the farmers market at a donation station where there was. Both we got to experience the demand side of people really wanting a premium product and getting there extremely early to get that premium product. So usually it'd be these raspberries, blueberries, strawberries from this specific farmer, and then people will be very excited about that. But at the same time, we saw a fair amount of waste, a fair amount of excess product that wasn't making it to these people and really didn't have a home at all. So that local product was usually either getting donated or really brought back as really expensive compost. So we thought that's, in a college naive way, we thought that's a disconnect. At the same time, we were making lots of smoothies. It's a very cheap meal. And we're using a lot of frozen fruit. And this frozen fruit typically, as we turn around the bag, said, product of Chile, Vietnam, Serbia. Yeah. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was okay, weird. This fruit is the same fruit as that fruit, but it's, for some reason we're pulling it all the way from there. So, with that level of naivete and not understanding, saying, hey, well, why would we just froze this? What is the best way to preserve this product? And nature gives us really two good ways of preserving things. It's freezing it or it's pickling it or kind of and that's really kind of how we got going. We started by, building our own IQF line, which is an individual quick freezing line. Basically would not recommend doing that by yourself. Do not order from China. Don't do it. It is challenging. But we learned a lot from that experience, honestly. And that actual experience of toiling away at that shared kitchen facility in Hillsborough, North Carolina, really helped us understand what we needed to scale and how we needed to scale. And believe it or not, it wasn't out of that shared kitchen. And now, Seal the Seasons, and I realize I haven't even explained what it is. What it is what we do is we create local supply chains across the country to bring locally grown food and primarily frozen food to consumers. So you can see a lot of our products are, North Carolina blueberries, North Carolina strawberries. Here we go. Jacob's right representing. So again, these blueberries are actually grown in Faison, North Carolina, packaged in Faison, North Carolina. And, all the branding really is about creating that same farmers market experience, but in the frozen aisle. And the frozen aisle is an area where a lot of products tend to be lower value. And we really saw that, we thought consumers, especially people our age, folks who are younger, a little bit older, really value that. And they just need to have a reason to buy. And that's how we got going. And that's Seal the Seasons.
Wow. I love the symbolism that you reconnected in a dining hall and now your product is.
Yeah. I mean, you guys can only see a little small snippet of me, but I am a big guy, so I really like food. So, for what it's worth, food is very fun, very interesting. And after college is really when I started getting interested in how do we make all this food? What is the infrastructure that's required? And it's just amazing the infrastructure that the U.S. has and the capacity the U.S. has to grow, process, whether that's, freezing, washing, drying, dehydrating. There's so much process that goes into what we do here. And we really look forward to continue to build more supply chains and more product lines off of that. And, we've shown the ability to do that over the last 5-6 years. Grocery stores love us, and we're looking to take the next step.
That's so interesting, Alex. And so you made this really interesting point that most frozen food we buy is international, but you're domestic. I mean, not to kind of jump ahead to current events, but I feel like if anything, that's only played to your advantage in the last couple years with all the supply chain issues. Have you seen that come into play? How you designed this business model that's now just become more and more rewarded when international goods are tough to get?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, we really took the position that we really do think our food system is going to be more regionally focused in 25 years, 30 years. Globalization in food is a great thing in many ways, but to have that be the basis of how you get your general calories and nutrition is, in my opinion, and this is a larger topic, like an issue of national security in some ways. And so, when a lot of supply chain disruptions happened during COVID, specifically during lockdown, when you saw basically a $10 to $11 trillion industry of food go from 50-50 in-house, out of home to basically 100% in-house and at grocery, that's a big bump. And so supply chains aren't really ready for that on a typical basis. And so, we actually filled a lot of shelves. Wegmans is a really good example of a customer where we basically were their only frozen fruit product for 3 months. We're the only ones shipping truckloads of product to them. And that's because, again, we're not waiting for fruit off the port of LA. We're not waiting for fruit from the port of Delaware or Philadelphia or what have you. It's already here. It's been grown here. It's been frozen here. And we're able to move more adeptly. And I think that's one example, an extreme example in our category, but we see the same thing in baby formula. There's one facility in Michigan that has an issue, gets shut down, where everyone's out of baby formula for now going on months. This is an issue that will continue to persist if we don't have a decentralized, distributed supply chain model for our products. So Seal Seasons really takes a lot of pride in saying, hey, it's not about getting the best commodity price. Like that's a short-term strategy. Long-term strategy is put yourself in a position where your brand is not only the most consistent, but it also is one that doesn't have to chase price. It's not one that has to race to the bottom, because in food, that's really a bad strategy, in my opinion, unless you really need the volume. And so I think that's, for us, kind of focusing on our distributed supply chain model and then bringing products out of that. That's always been our focus. And we've seen it really help a lot in our category in frozen fruit and frozen vegetable. But we could see it apply to so many different places, whether it be somewhere in the fresh section, whether it be somewhere in the produce section, even center store. I think there's a lot of applications.
I was expecting the price of the food when I went to go buy them to be over $10, but I was surprised. I got this huge bag of blueberries I showed on screen for I think $7.
Yeah.
And I've had this bag, I think, for a couple of weeks now. I went and got it a while ago. I'm only halfway through it, and we put it in our yogurt, and it's kind of part of our life now, which is really cool.
Man.
So when you talk about the business, we were looking at some of the trends in terms of okay, how big is the frozen food market? You said what did you say? This whole food market was in the trillions of dollars.
Food in general is about $11 trillion.
Okay, $11 trillion for the whole food market. Yep. Tom pulled out this stat when we were preparing for this. The frozen food TAM was it's a $66 billion industry just in the U.S.
Yep.
So you're basically going after this really huge category, trying to take your market share. I don't know if you can share. I know you guys have recently raised some funding. I think in 2021, I think y'all raised $2.5 million based on your website. How big is this business that you guys have been building over the past 6 years now?
Yeah. I mean, we're over $10 million in revenue. Moving. The goal is really to hit 25 in 18 months. And yeah, so I mean, I think that puts us as the sixth or fifth largest frozen fruit brand in the country.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, not that there's a huge bar to go, but we are kind of knocking on the door of some of the big competitors in the space. And yeah, I mean, I think as far as like our value proposition to frozen fruit, but also I think outside of it, it's really just finding a clean label, locally grown, transparent product that's good and consistent. Like, Jacob, you're just a recent consumer of seal season, so, and you may not be eating it every day, or maybe you are. But the big thing about our products, and we always are looking for opportunities, we think about growth opportunities, we're thinking about things in a consumer behavior that people are doing on a daily basis. And one of the things that's shifted during COVID quite a bit, and this has played to our advantages, now people are eating a lot of breakfast at home. And before that, breakfast either used to be on the go, at the office, etc. But with more people working from home, more people, either starting their mornings at home, or maybe more people just liking the routine of eating a breakfast at home, we've seen quite a bump to just frozen fruit in general. We've seen more space. The category grew exponentially through the last 2 or 3 years. And so, we've seen that, we always try to focus on what does the consumer use every day. And so frozen fruit, frozen vegetable, you're hitting 2 different opportunities during the day. And that's kind of how we look at, both frozen, but also outside of frozen growth opportunities. And, with that funding and with future funding, that's what we're really seeking out to do. We want to be a really, really big frozen fruit brand, a good frozen vegetable brand. And then we also want to be taking our same model into different categories where we can be a value add. And that's, ultimately the growth strategy. And we think it really don't have to do too much crazy marketing. A lot of, produce and food in general is just, being available, being in stock, being good, and then being consistent. And then the rest of it is really retention marketing, making sure if you mess up, you have the right staff in place to make that experience right. Because again, that person might be buying, and we just ran like a Black Friday sale. We have people buying like 80 pounds of fruits and vegetables. Like, this is like a real thing. Like, people eat a lot. And there's some of the top group of people who are eating frozen fruits and vegetables are shopping very often. They're buying quite a bit. And those are the people you want to serve. And you want to serve the folks who are using occasionally as well. But you want to do everything in your power to make sure that, the folks who are buying your brand every week and, spending that $7 to $10 to $11 every week have a reason to always spend that $7 to $10 to $11 every week. And it really is pretty simple when it comes down to food. And frozen is even more so. It's just about quality, consistency, and availability.
So it sounds like...
Is the guy who bought 80 pounds of fruit from you 3 days ago, is he begging you for a rewards program now? So you can start.
No, honestly, and it's like one of those things that I'm like still like, it's something I get a kick out of. I still do a lot of the consumer outreach myself because if we mess up, I want to be accountable for it. I want them to hear it from me. If it's someone who's like that into the product, I'm just curious. Like, I just want to understand what's going in their brain. Like, how do you use it? Like, there's so much to learn from people. And I think sometimes people, when they develop products, whether it be, in the tech space or even the frozen space, you don't talk enough to people who are using it. And I just am such a big believer in developing products with consumer impact, with consumers in mind, thinking about their behavior process, think of the use case, and then ask them what they actually think of it. And it seems very simple, but a lot of people in food don't do it. And I know a lot of people outside of food do not do that. So it's simple, but I mean, in general, they just use it every day and they really trust the product. You can't trust the other products, and that's big. And you don't want to violate that trust. And if you do, you need to make sure you explain what you did and what you're going to do to fix it. And that's about that.
I've never heard somebody take like a product management like mindset. Usually what I'd see like in like software development or like even like website development and apply it to basically food. That's like super interesting. So basically, like, you're applying that mindset. You're still like you're a co-founder. You're the COO of the company as well. I don't think we said that earlier in the episode. So you're like running basically all the operations and managing all those processes front to back, and also still engaging with customers, like people who will go to the grocery store, go to Wegmans, go to Harris Teeter, go to Kroger, buy the bag, and then if they write in or have a complaint, I guess the email here on the bag, if they need to contact you guys, like you're the guy who's still answering some of those.
No, I'll respond. And I think it's, I don't know. To me, it's like, you can either spend a ton of money on a marketing agency and run a bunch of ads and have them tell you what your demographic is in a digital world, or you can just ask people, and you can kind of just, and I do this too in the grocery store. I'll just ask people, hey, what's your thought process in this this frozen aisle? Why did you pick that one? Yeah. And you'd be surprised. Like people pick things for the weirdest reasons, and you just would never guess it. And a lot of our product development, and this is why I do it, is I lead product development as well. A lot of our product development is informed from those consumer insights. It's a very important part of what I believe is important to do is take those consumer insights and integrate them into your marketing, integrate them into your product development, and integrate them into your operations. If people tell me, hey, your blueberries, like I've got a couple unripe ones, I got a couple twigs, that's immediately, we're using that input to try to figure out what is going on. Is there a bulk lot? Is there a specific field that was picked and we didn't sort correctly? That's huge. Like I mean that's a huge like source of information, and not only that, you get the bonus of this person feels like they're getting excellent customer service when you're helping me. Like you're helping me figure out my problems and solve my future opportunities. And so yeah, I think it's uncomfortable. People don't like cold calling. People don't like being the person to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is Alex from Seal Seasons. You wrote in, you're unhappy about this experience. People get caught off guard. They're like, oh, weird. Like I thought you were just going to email or maybe never respond. And yeah, you want to be that surprise because it makes a difference and people remember that.
I love that, Alex. What's funny is I was at P&G 10 years ago, and a number of friends in the marketing department, and exactly what you're describing is like P&G's marketing strategy. Yep. They go into like grocery stores and Targets and Walmarts and just like stand in the aisle and literally just like interview people right there, strangers, kind of cold approaches. And I love that, to your point, you can spend thousands and thousands on like these.
Oh, millions, man. You can spend you can pay a big dough. You can pay big dough on trying to figure out what your consumer is, but you just ask them.
Right. On like kind of questionable results too, because you're asking someone to think about something theoretical. The brand penetration of Seal the Seasons might not even reach the survey, the end that you're actually paying to target. So I love that approach, and just kind of the consumer obsession almost of just getting that proximity to the consumer, which I'm sure helps when you're having these kind of conversations with the intermediaries, right? The distributors and the grocery stores, that you're not operating with like this information asymmetry that maybe you would if you weren't getting that kind of frontline exposure. I like that a lot. I also like your kind of focus on consumer behaviors, because myself, I don't have a bag of Seal the Seasons with me yet. I promise, Alex, I'll get it. My local Jewel Costco in the next couple of days. But just got back from Thanksgiving, so I at least get a pass on that, I hope. But I think I mentioned to you, I buy exclusively frozen meat now, which is like a total deviation from what I did for the last 10 years. And like, when you were mentioning the uptick in COVID, I saw the stat that there was a 94% surge in frozen food purchases in March 2020. Like there's this literal like 20x growth in like a food category. And there's some like analysis of that. For me, it was just, I'm tired of my meat going bad in the fridge. So I just want meat that's going to be preserved. And even if like I need to do something for an hour, like thawed or whatever, just love that it's always like the quality I want. It's not going to make me sick. It's, reliable. Have you seen that kind of same feedback coming back from consumers? Like, that's why we're buying your stuff. We just want it to not go bad. We want it to be predictable. And, we maybe even like our fruit frozen and cold rather than, room temperature. Or what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of I think you hit the nail on the head. So, I mean, you want consistency. You want meat you can trust that is not going to get you sick. And, at the end of the day, it needs to be available. And so I think frozen kind of hits a lot of those patterns. And, frozen quality is always there. Like, if you freeze things as soon as they're picked, it's going to retain almost all the nutrients. It's going to retain all the bricks, the sugar. Meat's similar, fish is similar. Most of the fish we all eat is at one point frozen on the ship. So I think we're doing this anyway. We're freezing it anyway because it's a good food safety step, and also it really helps us ship the product, and it keeps the quality high. So yeah, I think frozen fruit and frozen meat are not too different. The one thing I think is a little different about frozen fruit versus frozen meat is that Some people eat the fruit straight, and I do that. I'm weird. And for all the people that are weird out there, I see you, I feel you, I am you. But a lot of people there's different use cases for frozen fruit in many ways versus fresh fruit. So you see smoothies, protein shakes. Typically, those are being made with frozen fruit. Whereas if you're putting it on a salad, we do see people put our frozen sliced peaches on salads, but typically that's a fresh peach. But we see increased opportunities for crossover. But I think again, it comes down to how is the consumer using it. And frozen meat, don't have as much research on it, but I figure you're using it pretty similarly than if you're buying a fresh meat over the deli counter. And in that case, it honestly doesn't make sense to buy it fresh unless for some reason your cooking experience, your quality is somehow different. And I would challenge a lot of people who decide that the deli counter fresh meat is going to be better than a frozen meat, because biologically the stats are not in their favor. So that's definitely a cool experience. Yeah. And I think people are getting attuned to it. I mean, I think way back when frozen used to be where you put all the unhealthy meals. Bob Evans, sorry, Bob Evans, don't mean to call you out, but
I love Bob
you guys are printing dough, so I literally dough. So I don't feel too bad. But now we're seeing a lot of brands value up frozen, where it's like, hey, this is a good product, this is a good meal, and it just doesn't go bad, and and you'll maintain high quality, and it allows you to shift your schedule how you need to. Which again, we're all here. I think this particular interview has been shifted multiple times. That's a reality for a lot of people. And that we just want to make sure we're developing products for that consumer.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So Alex, I want to kind of dig on your history a little bit. So, you went to school at UNC Chapel Hill.
Yep.
And, you talked about earlier in the interview, you and your co-founder kind of found and kind of discovered the idea, or like this problem, I guess, while you were in the farmer's market, but didn't really start getting things going seriously until 2016. So kind of talk to me about, you said this thing offline too, before we started the interview, most of the time I talk people out of entrepreneurship. What was it about this idea that was man, I really have to do this. This is a problem that I really want to solve and dedicate my time in life to. And we'll start there, and then I'll kind of keep going. I really want your insight on what you tell future entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah. I think the greatest thing about starting something when you're younger is that you just don't know the world that's out there and the challenges that exist. Because I think we're all a bit older now. Now we know the world has some things that can throw at you and it hurts. So I think that was probably what fueled a lot of the beginning, was just the disbelief of the problem and that no one's fixing it. And then deciding that, hey, this fix we think is going to work. And our first product we were delivering in essentially Ziploc bags with labels that literally would fall off the bags of blueberries. So they would have to literally stamp the labels on the freezer door. And we still had people buying the product. And that's how you knew you had something. It's people see the value in this really, really raw looking, locally grown frozen fruit, and they still want to buy it, and they still believe in the product. And so for us, that was kind of a take, hey, not only do we think this is a problem and we think we have a solution, but other people believe in our solution. And that still fuels me to this day. And also just seeing the impact this makes on family farms, I think a lot of us are just really disconnected from how food is grown and where food is grown and who it comes from. And a lot of people, this is their livelihood. This is what they literally live in to do. And all they want is a chance to continue to do what they live to do. And a lot of times they're the biggest economic driver in their county, in generally their area. And if that farm goes out of business, that whole county might really not exist anymore. So I take a lot of responsibility, and I feel a lot of, pride in representing this brand with their product, and really moving as much of our cost of goods back to them as possible. So that's what keeps me going. Now you ask, what do I tell, new entrepreneurs is, again, it's not that I'm negative and I say, don't do it all the time. That's my test. That's my litmus test. If I tell you not to do it and you're okay, sounds good, I won't do it. It wasn't meant to be. You don't want it enough. Trust me. Because there are going to be a lot of people that tell you not to do it. A lot of people that tell you not to do it. I'm happy to take you on that journey and help you and share my experience as applicable as it is. If you're not going to listen to me, I love that. Like, but that's the tenacity you're going to need. You're going to need to hear a lot of no's and hear a lot of stop doing this, and you got to keep going. And that's just kind of the litmus test for me on how much you want to do this versus how much of it is a nice idea. Because I mean, we all like fantasize about things we want to do, and this is a great business idea. But to actually say, oh, I'm just going to start dedicating more of my time to doing this, and I'm going to listen to people who tell me not to do it, and I'm going to do it anyway. That's some grit. That's some like passion, determination, and that's what you're going to need, because I think we've taken a lot of L's over the last 5 to 6 years. We've had our fair share of wins too, but I tell people a lot of times those days are not great. You're going to have a lot of days that are kind of crappy, and you need to make sure that you're still going to want to get up in the morning and do the same thing again. Because a lot of times that's what it takes to work out of a rut, is to keep working at it. So yeah, that's when I'm talking to early stage entrepreneurs, I'm really just, I'm curious, and I want to see where their grit's at and where their passion's at. And if it doesn't line up, like I feel bad for them, because I don't want to put them in a position where they're going to fail, because you're, at least in food specifically, you're going to need some grit, because there's not a lot of ways to finesse success. It's just, it can be a bit of a grind occasionally, but it does bear fruit in many ways, hopefully.
Literally and figuratively.
I know. I use that phrase way too much. I use that phrase way too much, and I don't even mean to. So.
I've actually never really heard anybody, I'm like an avid like reader, podcaster, all that kind of stuff, especially when it comes to the topics of like entrepreneurship and business, especially before I started my first business. You feel like I was like a business fanboy for years before I actually jumped off into it. Yeah. I've never had anybody explain to me like this whole idea of like, okay, well, what is it about starting your own business or like entrepreneurship that sucks? Like, why is it crappy? Like, what do people really have to have grit like about? Like, I know that answer for me now, being on like in it, on the other side of it, and now in it in a new way, and it definitely gets easier. It's like the skills of entrepreneurship as you gain them get easier, but like especially when you're young, for like a lot of our listeners are like in their mid-20s.
Yeah.
Now that we kind of have like a big enough like sample base, like what should they be kind of like aware of and knowing like, hey, this is gonna be a tough go, and if I'm not really into this, it's probably gonna work out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's usually pretty hard to know until you try something and start just doing it. Like sometimes I think people overthink a lot and they don't do actual experiments, actual tests on whether their idea would work or not. Like just go talk to people. Like I said, like go talk to someone in the grocery store. Like if you have a food product, go to that grocery aisle and just watch people shop it for a little bit, and you'll learn a lot out of that process, and ask a couple of people and get your insights that way. So sometimes, I think people try to do too much of a thought exercise when it comes to starting a business, when it really is a lot about doing. It's about doing, testing, failing, reiterating, doing new tests. And that's a lot of it. I think the things that are bad or the things that hurt is honestly just like, those tests not working out, or your hypotheses being proven wrong and being told you're wrong. And then perhaps not being able to communicate that same passion or vision to other people, whether it be investors, angel investors, venture capitalists, people on your team, people not on your team, consumers, like people not, I think generally when people don't match your expectations or your passion, that sometimes can be a bit of a bummer. And I think can make people feel very low. But if you have that determination and you have the expectation that you are going to fail sometimes, and that some people are not going to vibe with what you're doing, that's fine. Like, you can't be defeated if you know that there are potential negative outcomes and you don't care. You're going to do it anyway. I see it just like that kind of grit is sometimes stupid, but sometimes you need that kind of stupid energy to kind of move through some really challenging times. You kind of got to keep yourself psyched up to sometimes work through what could be challenging funding environment. Like right now we're going through a challenging funding environment in general, where investors are very cautious of what's going on, and startups are still need to do what they need to do. And I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who are struggling mentally just because it's hard to keep the business going and keep their company going when all the investor needs to do is write them a check, and that would solve 75% of their problems. But it's hard to communicate that challenge to someone who isn't in your shoes. So you need to think about solutions, and you need to have the grit to be like, I'm not going to let that dollar sign put me in a rut. I'm going to work around it and either find another dollar sign, or I'm going to find a way where I don't need that dollar sign. And really, it's just that problem solving that I think eventually will lead you to success. And yeah, I just don't think you can fail. I think if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, like, your business won't fail. Like, you will get somewhere. It only fails if you stop. And if you don't have the grit, then that's what I always say. Like, sometimes it's okay to stop if it's not something you're passionate about. So that's probably a pretty long tangent for what you asked, but in general, I think it's tough to say for every individual person what it takes. But I always just say, just try something, try some experiments first, do something. Don't think too much about it. Like, sometimes you'll be surprised by the outcomes of those experiments, and that might lead you to the actual idea instead of what you had before.
I like that a lot, Alex. I mean, just in the spirit of like what kind of grit and what you've overcome, I mean, everything you've articulated to us has so many moving pieces, from needing to convince farmers that they should sell you their produce, and then needing to convince distributors and grocers to take your produce, then obviously needing to convince customers to pay for your produce, and then building a team and working with your founding team and scaling and all the supply chain considerations, and plus funding. I mean, you've touched on so many points. What has been like some of the biggest hurdles that you've been kind of proud of overcoming, and kind of like, how did you approach that? You're a very thoughtful person, and clearly like know your stuff really well. So I'm sure that you took like a lot of different approaches and learned a lot. What have you been kind of most proud of? Like, which hurdle that you've overcome and gotten to the top of the hill for?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be boring, but I'm again, like, kind of like Jacob said, I'm a nerd, and not so much about business. I don't read as many business books, but I'm a nerd about human behavior. And the biggest thing I ever did was get out of my own way. To be honest, that's the biggest thing I ever did, was realize that, when you're in college, no one teaches you how to be a manager. No one teaches you how to manage people who are effectively decades older than you and have significantly more experience than you. So, I think me being able to get over the fact of, like, I was a micromanaging person. Like, I came from a consulting background like you, Tom, where you're in charge of all the details. And if all the details aren't right, it's on you. And to transition that mindset from I control everything and everything is on me, to like saying, hey, I have employees, and now we have like a pretty large team of, I got to trust them to do their job. And even if they can only do it 80 to 85% as well as I can, guess what? I can't even do all the jobs at 80 to 85%. So we'll take that. We'll take that all day. So I think really just getting out of my own way when it comes to management. Hiring an executive coach, God, great idea if you're young, and you don't know how to really do it, and you need some good tips. It's going to seem like really simple stuff that you could have read in a book, but really just having someone to hold you accountable to small things here and there goes a long way. So I would say, that's probably the biggest thing that I ever got around. And when both me and my co-founder did that, and we also like do a lot of like almost like couples therapy in a way, just being really intentional about being friends, but also being good business partners and calling each other out. Those are the two biggest things. And again, like I think founders sometimes can be looking for the best growth hack, but a lot of it is like here. It's like about trying to figure out yourself what you need to be doing every day. And really just trying to prioritize yourself, but also make sure you're being as efficient, but also, as fair as possible. So yeah, that's probably it for me.
I love that, Alex. Also, I can imagine that couples therapy with someone you've known dating back to elementary school, it could get pretty feisty pretty fast,
We did that back I'm always right. So I'm always right. So it doesn't really matter. So no, I'm kidding. No, I mean, I think that co-founder relationship, there could be, I could write a book and a half on that stuff, and I still wouldn't be applied at most people. Very difficult. Like, I don't know how people do it. I am very lucky that I have a friend and a co-founder that I think is very understanding, has a high EQ, and also is good at different things than I am. And we are able to split responsibilities that way, in a way that we trust each other to get whatever each other needs to get done. and we're okay calling each other out when we're not doing that. But and also picking up slack when we feel that other person's slacking for whatever reason it might be. Yeah, it's a careful balance, man. I think both of you guys are married. I'm not. I only can handle one marriage at a time. So, gotta wrap this puppy up if I gotta do anything else. So, but no.
So Alex, that's awesome, man. Two things I definitely want to talk about. I want to talk about like distribution, how you get into grocery stores.
Yep.
There are a lot of food entrepreneurs who would love to
Yeah.
learn how you guys did that. And then you had talked about like, hey, I'll talk about anything, like even in terms of like what it's even like being sued, right? Because you guys are selling food. I feel like anybody who sells food is going to have some kind of litigation on their hands just because it is a perishable product, and like you do have to like discuss some of that stuff, and that can feel like scary. But first, distribution, right? Like, did you guys build the business with distribution in mind? Or were you just like, hey, let's perfect this product, and like kind of organically grew to what it is today? I think you guys are in, hundreds, if not over 1,000 grocery stores at this point. How do you like navigate that landscape and get into the first grocery store and grow?
Yeah, I think we're like around 5,000 or 6,000 grocery stores nationwide now.
Okay. A lot.
To be honest, we took neither of those strategies. We did not at 22 years old. We didn't do those. Both sound like good ideas. People listen to the podcast, you should try one of those first. But yeah, I mean, we didn't really build it in distribution in mind. Like initially, we really thought it'd be just a North Carolina brand, North Carolina product that was going to be North Carolina farmers, and that was great, and it still is great. I love the core line so much, but it quickly became something where we saw this same need be in other areas of the country. Like I'm from Philadelphia, a lot of people have a lot of pride about their Jersey blueberries. Same thing with people in the Midwest with their Michigan blueberries and Michigan cherries. We saw these weird associations with local food like happening literally all over the country. And it was kind of a need that we said, hey, this just makes sense. Like, and the grocery stores want this as well. So, we kept building products that were just regionally focused and regionally distributed. To get technical on the distribution, we typically go direct to our customers. So we're shipping, some level of pallets or a full truckload to a distribution center of a grocery store, but sometimes we sell to a distributor as well. And how to get into those, there's no right way and there's no wrong way. I mean, our first store was a co-op in Carborough, Weaver Street Market. Shout out James. And then, the next one was really Harris Teeter. And what we did actually is we sent a letter to the category manager at Harris Teeter with like a newspaper clipping and saying, hey, we're kicking butt. And the next day, like essentially, they gave us full authorization to all like 250 or 300 stores, and we were just totally not ready. Like we were not actually kicking that much butt yet, as much as that article liked to say. But sometimes you got to be scrappy to get that first couple of accounts, and then otherwise it's a domino industry. You really just have to continue to prove that you are a value add to that category. You're bringing in new consumers, not just people who are already there, but bringing in people who are thinking about local or just wanted something better in the frozen aisle, and there's new people buying there. So you just, really it's a domino industry. You got to get the first dominoes to fall, do everything in your power to get people to buy your product and develop good sales data. And then really just take that sales data around to all your geographic, all the other grocery stores in the area, and then do the same thing again in a different region. It's again, I think it's pretty methodical once you get going, but that first couple is really hard. And it's going to take a lot of grassroots efforts.
Have you thought about like getting into Costco, or have you all explored that?
Yeah, definitely working on Costco. Costco's a tough one where they have like a really strong Kirkland signature that they are very protective of. So they don't want anything to eat into what that bread, what that blueberry and that strawberry for them is doing. But we have actually a couple products, a couple pilots in the works with them. Actually, something like this. It's like we developed these kind of smoothie kits. You can find them at Harris Teeter. Again, developed using inputs, focus groups from real consumers who said, hey, I just need to take a couple more things out of my smoothie because I don't want to buy a whole thing of pea protein powder. I just want to make a smoothie that tastes like the one at the juice shop, and that's what I want. And so we're kind of designing products like that for Costco, where they have their normal frozen fruit covered and they don't really want to bring in a competitive product to that, but they're still one of the largest buyers of frozen fruit and produce in the country, if not maybe the largest. So it's definitely one where we feel like we can use new products and innovation to kind of become a value add for them.
It's super fascinating, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason why I wanted to ask like even the litigation question is because I feel like when like food entrepreneurs or like entrepreneurs who like really have like a really good food idea or like good relationships and they're solving a problem, knowing that like litigation is probably going to happen at some point because it is a perishable product. Someone might get sick. Someone may be in, a lot of people would be opportunists and say that they got sick and really they didn't off your product. And that keeps them basically from starting the business. Want to ask you that question, kind of what has that been like for you guys? Was it scary? Is it not scary? And then like, do you see it more as like a cost of doing business or like, how do you encourage entrepreneurs who kind of want to get into this space not to be afraid of that basically eventually happening to you?
Yeah. I mean, I do want to caveat, like, when we were sued, it was not a consumer. It was not like we made someone sick. To date, I don't think, knock on wood, have made anyone sick with our product. It was more a vendor. We just didn't pay on time. And that happens when you don't have cash. And sometimes you got to drag out your AP a little bit more than you want to. So, but I mean, like, talking about just the legal ramifications of the space in general, like, I wouldn't be scared of entering the space, but make sure if you aren't a food expert, like make sure you get someone or hire someone who knows what they're doing. If you're trying to make things in a shared kitchen, make sure you have someone who understands pH. pH is very important to preventing disease. People don't know that. It's not too complicated, food safety, but it's one thing that has to be done repetitively, and you have to be very consistent with the way you test your pathogen panels, like all that stuff. If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, you should go find someone who knows what that is. That's my biggest piece of advice, is that, like, again, don't be lackadaisical in your food safety. It can hurt you, and it can actually keep you from launching altogether if you make someone sick, and then you won't be doing it anymore, and you might owe money, like you said, in a lawsuit. But again, we went, I think at one point, frozen fruit was going through an FDA audit because of hepatitis B or something. And I got a call from the FDA. I think I was on the subway in Brooklyn, heading to some sort of conference. And I got off and I was terrified. Like it was like Food Lion. I think it was with our Food Lion buyer.
Got it.
And they were just like, just FYI, we're pulling all products and we're pulling your products too for testing. And I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know what hepatitis B is or whatever. C. It might be hepatitis C. But we were fine, and even like now we have like a decent relationship with our FDA agent at North Carolina. But at first it's terrifying because it's like the unknown. But statistically, if you put good processes in place and you work with people that you trust to make your product, you're going to be in an okay spot. I just encourage people, if you are making the product yourself, make sure you have someone on staff or just as a consultant to teach you and to how to send samples to a lab, teach you what pathogens you need to be testing for. And if you are working with a perishable product or a product that, can develop mold, pH is important. Acidity prevents mold growth. If it's more basic, you might have a problem. So again, if that doesn't make sense to you, you should hire someone. And most people don't get it, and that's okay. You just need to make sure you have the right people in place.
And I'm assuming you can just like Google food safety expert, and find somebody in your area.
Honestly, I don't know. My best bet is always just talk to your Department of Agriculture. That's always a really good place to start. And they will connect you to an extension agent, or they'll connect you to someone in maybe the FDA, or they might just have a better resources for you. But yeah, remember those government resources. Like we still talk to the NC Department of Ag. We talk to the Department of Ag all the time about it. Their extension agents, or people who are out in the field working with farmers. They're really good people. Like, those are good resources that are available to your company. Like, you should go talk to them. They want to help you. So don't forget that, like, there are government resources in place. We've won a number of grants from the USDA for our work. There are resources in place that are interested in your success, and you got to go find them and be resourceful. But that's like any entrepreneur, right?
Love that. So, Alex, this has been great. As a one parting kind of question here, what's a piece of advice in addition to all the other golden nuggets that you've shared, that you'd leave with kind of our listeners who are largely either considering their own ventures or maybe in early stages?
Yeah, people always ask me this, and I always have it's always like a flavor of the week for me, like what to say. It's yeah, no, I don't. I mean, my biggest piece of advice is like just at the end of the day, and it's a theme for me, is like just make sure you're just thinking about the business yourself, and know that you are the expert on your business more than anybody else is. There are maybe parts of the business that you do not understand wholly, like whether it be food safety, fundraising, fulfillment, how to hire trucks to bring your product from place to place. But know that you holistically are the one that knows how all of that works together. And really just understand that there's going to be a lot of opinions. A lot of people give a lot of advice when you're getting going. But just remember that you're the only one that is going to do it. So everyone else can give you advice. Giving advice is cheap, in my opinion. Doing it is harder. So my biggest piece of advice is just remember that you're the one that's going to be doing it. So follow the advice that you feel is right. And if you make a mistake, just learn from it and don't do it again and do something different. And that's definitely just part of being an entrepreneur at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to just track along with all the successes that you guys have had and will have going forward. Going to over double in size in the next 18 months. So thanks so much for being on and sharing just a view into everything that you're doing. Yeah,
for sure. No, I really appreciate you guys having me on. Really good questions. And if I can be helpful to anyone, my contact information is on our website. I'm happy to talk to people. Like, again, I don't give good advice. I give, I think, relevant advice. And I never try to pretend my experience is the same as your experience, because that's just not the case. And so, but no, thanks again.
Cool. Yeah, we'll put your contact info and all the stuff from where we distribute, Spotify, YouTube, and all that good stuff.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jacob.